Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. We are continuing our lessons of comparative religion, where we're briefly looking at comparative aspects between Islam and Judaism and then Christianity. So last time I began the discussion on the manuscripts and the text of the Hebrew Bible. Now, one thing I should note about this term Hebrew Bible that I'm using, what do I mean? In the Western world, in the Christian world, they have something called, they call it the New Testament and then the Old Testament. So this terminology of Old Testament is a Christian context because Christians, um, many believe, and there's this historical debate on the following of the law, um, that this is the New Testament was with the Gospels and attributed to Isa alayhi salam. We'll talk about what other books are in there, the Paul's letters and things like that. And then we have the Old Testament, which was the entire Hebrew Bible. So Jews do not consider that as the Old Testament. They don't use this kind of terminology. It is I use the word Hebrew Bible for it, and they call it Tanakh. And I'll talk about what that Tanakh means a little later in the class. We'll go through the other books and how there's different canons of the scripture historically. So continuing the topic of the manuscripts. So I said there were translations. There was the Aramaic Targum Onkelos. There's the Samaritan. There's the Syriac Parshita. And so there's these different translations or different Torah sections. We could call it Pentateuch sections. We're using that word to refer to what they have, what they consider as Torah. And we have these different translations which have variances and differences in them. We have different differences occurring between them. Sometimes minor differences, sometimes bigger differences. So there's differences occurring to these books, and all these books at oldest we could date them back to around the Second Temple period, during the Second Temple period, and onward. So, and these books were the Torah that was revealed to Musa was many years before that, in way before the First Temple period, when they were in the desert, Bani Israel, after they were saved from the enslavement of the Egyptians, and they were in the desert, and Allah revealed the Torah to Musa and made a covenant with Bani Israel. So this is way after the time now, way after a time that we have these actual books that we can trace them back as far as manuscripts or when the translations happen. So the important manuscript nowadays, which one does this Hebrew Bible? If you go to any Hebrew Bible nowadays or any Old Testament nowadays, which manuscripts do the current Hebrew Bible base their text on? What is their current text? What is it based upon? The important manuscripts for the current Hebrew Bible are the Leningrad Codex. The Leningrad Codex of around 1008 Common Era. This is only a little bit over 1,000 years old, this Leningrad Codex. There's even later. Second Temple period ended almost around 2,000 years ago. This Leningrad Codex showed up. We have the Leningrad Codex from about around approximately 1,000 years ago. So the important manuscripts for the current Hebrew Bible are the Leningrad Codex. Now, this Leningrad Codex is based on the written version by a scribe. It's a written version by a scribe, and that scribe, this was based on the version of Aaron bin Ashir. Aaron bin Ashir. So Harun ibn Ashir. So he was a he what he did was he put the vowel markings on the Hebrew letters. So Hebrew, just like Arabic, if you know a little basic things about the Arabic language, you know that Arabic, we have the letters and then we have vowel markings on them. You have like the harakats, you have fatha, dhamma, kasra. So just like Arabic has vowel markings, Hebrew also has vowel markings. Now they don't look the same. They're like dots and little like a little like a T-like thing. So they have this. It doesn't look the same, but they have this idea of harakats, of vowel markings. Therefore, a slight change to those vowel markings can sometimes alter the word's meanings. Just like in the Arabic, if we change a slight vowel, it will alter the meaning. It could alter the meaning. You have to investigate and see if this is how this works with the Hebrew words as a linguistical study. So here they view this Leningrad Codex. I mean, nowadays, it's considered, I won't say everyone considers it like this, but it's considered that the current corrected text in regards to the vowel markings is the Leningrad Codex. So these are called the Mansura text. Mansura text. Ibn Ashir, he added the Mansura vowelization markings and scintillation notes to what? To another codex that was there called the Aleppo Codex. So it's Aleppo Codex, and he added these vowelizations and uh, uh, scintillation notes to the Aleppo Codex. The former, this Aleppo Codex, or the former, the Leningrad Codex, is the oldest known complete copy of the Hebrew text. Oldest known complete copy of the Hebrew text. And it is dated to be somewhere in the 11th century Common Era. So only around 1,000 years old. As for the Aleppo Codex, it is said to have been complete until 1947. However, a portion of it went missing. So the portion of it went missing, and I think there may be some debate on how that happened, whether, maybe you could look into that a little more and see if there's a reliable view in it. Anyhow, this version is said to be missing most of the Torah portion. So the Pentateuch portion, the first 5 books, it is said to be missing most of that. And some years ago, there was a small discovery of some portions of the book of Exodus as well. Some small portions of the book of Exodus as well were also discovered some years ago as maybe fragments of an older version of the Hebrew Bible. So the famous Jewish scholar Maimonides, he only accepted Ben Ashir's version in the opened and closed sections. Hence, this shows that there was difference of opinion in regard to Aaron bin Ashir's work. So there was differences of opinion on the work of Ben Ashir, which was scribed by a later scribe and became the standard version of today's Hebrew Bible. That is the Leningrad Codex. So this is the one that's the current Hebrew Bible that commonly is read, that commonly people look at in Hebrew, and that the English ones are translated from, as commonly, is this version, the Leningrad Codex. Unless they're using the Greek or something, someone using the Greek, you'd have to look into that. We'll talk about the Greek one a little later, though, inshallah. So, but this is talking about the Hebrew text, right? According to Emmanuel Tov, he does textual criticism of the Hebrew Bible. The differences which are attested to in the Dead Sea Scrolls indicate that multiple versions of the Hebrew scripture already existed by the end of the Second Temple period. So according to Emmanuel Tov, he says that what they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls confirms to him, attests to him, that there were different multiple versions of this Hebrew scripture that already existed by the end of the Second Temple period. This is what is referred to, this Leningrad Codex that I'm talking about. This Leningrad Codex is what is referred to as the Masoretic text. While one can realize some differences between the Septuagint text, which is the Greek translation, which was translated in the 3rd and 2nd century BCE, it's still in the Second Temple period, but it's a Greek version of this text. You could observe in the Septuagint and the Parshita, which is the Syriac translation, which might have occurred in the 2nd century Common Era. So you could observe differences between these texts. Prior to that, there were fragments. We have fragments that existed, fragments that have been found that have been existing from various periods and various texts, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls and other translations. So you have other such things. Like I said, you got the Aramaic, and you have the Greek translation. So about this Leningrad Codex, the Leningrad Codex is that it has sometimes in this Leningrad Codex, some experts point out that it has typos. Vowels were placed thousands of years after the assumed date of the Torah as well. Therefore, due to this fact of differing versions and addition of the vowel markings, which, like in Arabic, can alter the meanings, we can see that through an academic research of the text, there has been some sort of tahrif between the manuscripts and between the translations. To what extent is this issue, though? To what extent has the tahrif occurred? Hence, we may view these books with a grain of salt then, noting that we certainly believe that Allah the Exalted has sent down the Torah. And many things we find in this book, we have agreement with in Islam. Many things we can reconcile. Many things we can accept. Actually, even Islam answered many of Ahlul Kitab's debates. Any of their disputes, Islam gave the answer to. Therefore, what is a safe way to handle this Torah? A safe way to handle this Torah or Pentateuch is that we can understand that the core of the message is found in these books. We can understand the core of the message that we can relate to, that we can affirm, and we have to look into authentic Islam for what is ambiguous as we may not be sure of which version between these differing manuscripts is correct and which version is more in line with the original one. Hence, inshallah, this matter will be sorted out in the future, inshallah, with the return of Al-Masih, alayhi salam, and Al-Mahdi, may Allah hasten their return. And then, we have hadith that the Imam has that the Imam has had the Torah and the Injil with him. So inshallah, he could bring that out, inshallah. And if there's wherever there's a problem, he can inshallah will be enlightened about where that problem is. Maybe some things we didn't understand, and now we need an explanation. um Maybe there's lots of different secrets that we don't understand about these books. They're very ancient, and with the right elucidation and the right explanation, and seeing what the most authentic version has in it, then these matters inshallah will be all sorted out. So inshallah that happens, and then we can solve this problem. But for now, we see from an academic lens, we see differing reports, and sometimes there could be different theological points. And not to say maybe there's a way to understand sometimes some things, but maybe there's direct conflict. So we have to see and analyze things unbiasedly and maturely, seeking guidance from Allah the Exalted, and not so easily just rejecting things without something sound basis that's going to stand on the day of judgment for us. So can we connect this book to Prophet Musa though? Not from the manuscript side, right? Not from the manuscript side. Yes, maybe they transmitted things orally and things like that, and maybe but we don't we have some parts where we may have some we may have some kind of suspicion of certain parts, or some kind of questions about certain parts. So can we connect this book to Prophet Musa? Not from archaeological or manuscript dating. We can't necessarily do that. Yes, fragments and manuscripts old. Yes, I said date. We have manuscripts dating to the Second Temple period. We have some old fragments and things like that. Yes, okay, but we don't have proof of which version existed in the time of Prophet Musa. We don't have proof of that version that existed in the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. But so those things are not that old to pull us from an archaeological a kind of manuscript research into that period, rather during the Second Temple period and after, mainly. So other theories have been put forward. Traditionally, for some time, it has been held that Moses alayhi salam had written most of the 5 books. And like I said, there's been some translations. There's been translations of the book that have occurred, and even there's discussion. So some have put forward the theory of different authors. Some have put forward the theory of different authors, which was compiled into 5 books. This theory was put forward by someone called Julius Wellhausen. Julius Wellhausen, he was a German fellow, and his theory states that there are 5 authors put into these books. 5 authors, that different books, and they were put together. By who? They don't necessarily know. Happens sometime in the Second Temple period. These academics discuss. This is what you will hear if you go to academic circles. This is not the traditional Jewish view, by the way. This is not the traditional Jewish view. They argue against this. So this compilation, according to this view, held sometime in the Second Temple period, had occurred sometime in the Second Temple period. Scholars, however, they research and attempt to discover and rediscover which verses fall into these 4 authors. So they divide them into 4 different books, and then they research which verses fall into this one and this one and this one. And it's an ongoing kind of process. Regardless, we can say that at least the core of the message is within the book, within this book. At least the core of the message is within this book. You find Tawheed, you find the requirement for obedience to Allah, the following of prophets. You find many laws that we agree with, many moral principles we agree with, many historical figures we agree with. You could argue that you find basically mostly a lot of the core beliefs in these books. Maybe not everything, but you find a lot of it in there. And in other Hebrew Bible books, you have core, or you find even more. So you can say you can find even more. So regardless, we can say that at least the core of the message is within this book. If the extra is something else or something we just don't understand or something misplaced, this is a larger topic. It's a larger topic of research that would have to occur and discovery that would have to occur. And we will settle here that there are many things from a comparative aspect that we can affirm from our Islamic sources. Many things. I think you could spend your whole life comparing Judaism and Islam. You could spend a long time at least. There's a lot. So there can be a discussion held on tahrif, like changing. Tahrif means literally changing the intended direction. So this could be in interpretation. It could be also in different ways. It could be omitting or adding something. So we can say that we could have that topic. There is a topic of tahrif, and that's another topic that could be held. Is what does Islamic sources have about tahrif of the Torah? What does it say about that? And we can bring Quranic verses and see what scholars interpret them, those Quranic verses as, and then we can raise questions onto the extent of the tahrif again. However, this would be a lesson and a couple lessons of its own. But again, our result would be here that we are now having some things we agree with and some things we are not sure of necessarily. Just have to clear my word here. Okay, so tahrif in Arabic gives the meaning of changing the direction, not just change while keeping the same destination. So you have the tahrif is changing the destination. Hence, tahrif diverts from the intended direction of the statements. And technically, this can be either lafzi or manawi. Lafzi tahrif type of tahrif, lafzi is verbal. This is when words are changed, deleted, or added. Manawi is when the words are kept, the words are there, but the meaning is changed. The meaning is changed. So there's different types of tahrif. So we have in the Holy Quran, in Surah 5, Ayat 13, it's a transinterpretation, but on accordance of their breaking the oath, but on account of their breaking the oath of their covenant, mithakahum la'nahum waja'alna kulubahum kasiya. But on account of their breaking their covenant, we cursed them and made their hearts hard. A note here is that la'na is kind of like a dua for the removal of the mercy from Allah. Yuharifuna al-kalima an mawadihi. There it is. And they did tahrif, they changed the words from its place. Mawadihi, from its places. وَنَسُوا حَظًّا مِمَّا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ. And they forgot a portion from what they were reminded with it. So you see these 2 points? They broke their covenants. They changed the destination of the words from its places. and forgot a portion of what they were reminded of. So this is the portion that's important for our topic. We'll leave the rest of the ayat. I suggest you read the Arabic here and understand the Arabic, um, inshallah. So in Minwahi al-Quran, one of the contemporary tafsir, the author, he says here, this verse is about the Jews who distorted the words in the Torah from the places in which Allah placed them, interpreted it in a way other than what was revealed, or changed it into a form other than its form. In Al-Mizan, the author, Tafsir Al-Mizan, the author says this hard-heartedness led them to altering the words from their places. This alteration could be by, in a way, this alteration could be by interpreting a divine speech in a way which God was not pleased with. This is misinterpreting it and giving it an uncalled for meaning. Also, it could be by deleting some words or adding or altering it. All these are examples of tahrif, of alteration. In this way, they lose sight of clear realities of the religion. Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, in his tafsir, he says, because of their breaking the promise, or the mithaq, the oath, Allah cursed them and withdrew his overflowing mercy from them, as a result of which their hearts were hardened and turned to pieces of stones, so much so that they began to sin against Allah and his messengers, misusing their scriptures, taking words out of their right positions and meanings, and applying them to the things which the words did not mean that. They misinterpreted and misexplained the words of God to common people and the layman. During that, they forgot even the purpose of God of the revelations. So we see that we can find many things then in the Torah that we can agree with, but we should note that there is something missing. There's something missing. There are things that may be missing, and there are areas where we may need an explanation of why it is there. What does it mean? And what's happening? So, as for the Holy Quran is a vital axis for the prophetic mission. Vital axis of the prophetic mission. It is a living and declared miracle. The Holy Quran is so important and so important from its earliest occurrences of revelation. Its verses were being recorded by special scribes. Therefore, the Holy Quran has been preserved in its original, so that the Quran we have today is the same Quran in its original form without anything being deleted nor distorted. Now, of course, people have misinterpreted it. Of course, that type of tarif has occurred. But the text itself is the same text. We find in the Holy Quran, Inna nahnu nazalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafizun. Surah 15, ayat 9. Verily, we have revealed the reminders, means the Quran, and we will most surely be its guardian. It's actually hafizun. Hafizun. This is protector, preserver, protector. We have Surah 75, ayat 17. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'anahu. Certainly on us, upon us, is its collection and its recitation. So you see this in the Holy Quran itself. The Holy Quran, the preservation is upon Allah the Exalted. Some extra steps were taken besides the appointment of scribes as well. The prophet would come and he would say the revelation, and scribes would write it down. So this is happening in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi. So Besides the appointment of scribes, some of them mentioned, some extra steps that are mentioned are as follows. First, the Prophet ﷺ, after the revelation was received, would recite them officially to a gathering of men, and after it hold a second gathering for women. This is what's mentioned about it, and this is mentioned by Azami in his history of Quranic text. Second thing is there was an emphasis on memorization of the Quran. Just like, to become a hafiz of Quran, there was an emphasis on memorization of Quran. Third is the Muslims had an obligation to memorize parts of the Quran for their daily prayers. Fourth is there was encouragement of reciting from the written text. As a result, it is said there was many scattered portions of the written Quran. Now, the Jewish belief is that the Torah was revealed and written down over 39 years period. As for the Quran, some say it was 20 years and others say it was a 23-year period. Prophet ﷺ appointed special scribes to write down the verses which he recited to them that Allah revealed to him. In Arabia before the prophetic mission, a very small number of people knew how to read and write. However, literacy gradually grew with the birth of the prophetic mission. From the growing group of the prophet, the Prophet he appointed scribes, and some scribes had different tasks. These scribes there were scribes specially for revelation, scribes of Wahi. These are called the scribes of revelation. As Zanjani, he says that they were 43 people. From these two scribes were closest to the Prophet, they were Zayd ibn Thabit and Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. During the time of the Prophet, it is argued that there are many reports that indicate that there was a written Quran at the time of the Prophet. Zanjani says. So Zanjani says some companions had collected the entire Quran in the lifetime of the Prophet, and while others had partial collections, which they completed after his demise. Ibn Nadim, in his Fahrist, he lists the following collectors of the Holy Quran in the lifetime of the Prophet, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sa'd ibn Amr, ibn Zayd, Abu Darda, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Zayd ibn Nu'man, Ubay ibn Ka'b, and Zayd ibn Thabit. So he lists these as people having complete copies. Now, was the Holy Quran compiled after the death of the Prophet, or was it compiled before? As you've seen, there's some argument there that there was existing in the time of the Prophet. There is a number of traditions that suggest the collection after the death of the Prophet. Sayyid Kui, though, he suggested that the compilation of the Quran began in the lifetime of the Prophet. Historically, we have many things we can research over him, such as, was the Quran compiled before the death of the Prophet? What was the Quran compiled by Imam Ali alayhi salam? Also, what about the compilations of which Abu Bakr, Umar, and Hafsa eventually had? What were those? Which they had? What was the Uthmani Codex? And those you can go into. We're not going to go into them here in the next lesson, but you could go to Quranic Sciences. We have lessons on Quranic Sciences, and we talk about it a little bit more over there, inshallah. So scholars, they differ whether it was compiled in the lifetime of the Prophet or after his demise. Regardless, as you have the tacit approval of the Ahlul Bayt at the very least during these times. So this is the Quran. We'd have no, this is what's argued. So some scholars argue that there are many narrations that indicate to us that there was, besides the memorization of the Holy Quran, a written copy of the Quran during the lifetime of the Prophet. Some collections, however, had only a few chapters, yet the appointed scribes had completed collections. Zanjani says some companions had collected the entire Quran in the lifetime of the Prophet, while others had partial collections, which they collected after his demise. And like I said, Ibn Nadim, he states the following: collectors of the Quran during the lifetime of the Prophet were Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salam, Sa'd ibn Amr ibn Zayd, Abu Darda, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Zayd ibn Nu'man, Ubay ibn Ka'b, and Zayd ibn Thabit. Now, Sayyid Kui, he believed that the task of collecting the Quran occurred during the Prophet's lifetime. And it was critical of those, and he was critical of those reports that suggested otherwise. He evaluates them in his book Al Bayan and concludes that they cannot be relied on. So he believed that the Quran was compiled in the lifetime of the Prophet. So you see, there's two different opinions. As for the commonly recited versions amongst people in the time of the Imams, these are viewed as acceptable to recite. Hence, our scholars argue the Quran has been preserved, and this has happened in the presence of the Imams alayhim salam, who allowed the recitations of Hafs, the common one, as example. Hence, from a Shia perspective, we can argue we have an affirmed version of our Holy Scripture. Of course, there are topics here to discuss which deserve its own sections, of course. And some small groups from the Sunnis and the Shias, they have disagreed with the majority of the view here, and that is a whole topic as well that can be addressed in its proper places. And scholars will argue with the very verses that I bring in the beginning as one of the arguments that shows, if you look back at these verses of the Holy Quran, they say, "Verily we sent it down the vicar, and certainly we are its protector." So that is everything for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about salvation. We're going to start a more comparative analysis, and we're going to talk about salvation between Judaism and Islam. What are the Nawahid laws? What does Islam say about the salvation of Ahlul Kitab, of non-Muslims who are Kitabis? What are some views that we can suggest about it? And all that will be in the next lesson, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.